Buyers new to Rolex face mountains of information, both current and historical. Hell, even ardent fans have trouble keeping up. As of 2024, Rolex makes hundreds of individual references divided into over a dozen different collections. Rolex Submariner, Rolex GMT Master 2, Rolex Cosmograph Daytona, Rolex Seadweller, Rolex Deep Sea, Rolex Explorer, Rolex Explorer 2, Rolex Air King, Rolex Yacht Master, Rolex Oyster Perpetual, Rolex Datejust, Rolex Day Date, Rolex Sky Dweller, Rolex 1908. If those collections weren't enough to keep track of, each one falls into one of two major categories, classic and professional. In the simplest of terms, think of Rolex's classic watches, which include the Day Date, Datejust, Oyster Perpetual, Sky Dweller, and 1908, as dressier timepieces designed for everyday wear. They weren't developed for a specific professional pursuit, such as diving. The professional watches, which include the Submariner, Air King, GMT Master 2, Yacht Master, Cosmograph Daytona, Seadweller, Deep Sea, and Explorer, were developed for a specific purpose, be it scuba diving, driving, spelunking, etc. It's important to note that while a certain number of the professional watches do include specific functionality and increased water resistance, the classic watches are no less well built. After all, you'll find the Sky Dweller, currently Rolex's most complicated watch, housed within the classic collection. So, here is everything you need to know about each current Rolex men's watch, including its history and features. Before continuing to watch the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, and now let's move on. Rolex Submariner. Rolex, Blancpain, and Zodiac were neck and neck in releasing the first dive watches with rotating bezels. However, when in 1953 Rolex put an external diving bezel on a more robust version of its already famously water-resistant Oyster Perpetual, kept the automatic winding in place, and added a sturdy adjustable bracelet, the most iconic and important dive watch in history was born. It wasn't really until the 1980s, however, that the sub became the fashionable item it is now, largely due to preppy folks sporting them as an assertion of an active lifestyle that, more likely, revolved around cocktails at the yacht club. Alas, tool watches became fashion items during this decade, and the rest is horological history. Rolex understood that its Submariner had ascended from tool to jewel, and so gold, two-tone, and even diamond-encrusted versions cropped up during the decade of materialism. Today, however, it's the plain steel models that are impossible to come by at retail and which sell for as much as 25% above retail among enthusiasts, while gold models are much less sought after. It's a strange phenomenon, but people around the world are clamoring for steel subs. Rolex GMT Master 2. When Pan American Airlines ruled the transatlantic skies in the 1950s, Rolex designed the original GMT Master for their pilots, who needed to track multiple time zones simultaneously. In 1982, the crown upgraded to the GMT Master 2. A new movement and an independently adjustable local R hand turned out to be big hits as steel and gold models asserted a pitch-perfect jet-setting attitude. Plenty of folks knew to rock a Rolex Submariner for maximum panache, but rocking a GMT Master 2 was a slyly stylish move that demonstrated the owner's uniqueness. To this day, the GMT Master 2 emits a reserved eccentricity. In 2007, Rolex put out an improved GMT Master 2 with a ceramic Cerachrom bezel and a new movement that hosted a suite of modern updates. Since then, it's been all about metal and color combos, which are judiciously and painfully released at a rate of about one a year. In 2023, however, Rolex delivered something different, yellow gold and two-tone versions of the GMT Master 2 with material matching Jubilee bracelets and black and gray bezels. The brand followed that up in 2024 with an Oyster steel version featuring the same black and gray bezel minus the gold accents, available on either a Jubilee or Oyster bracelet at launch. Rolex Cosmograph Daytona. Before the 1960s, Rolex housed third-party chronograph movements in Oyster cases. Then the company upped the case size, redesigned the dial, and put out the space-age-sounding Cosmograph. Shortly thereafter, when the Crown sponsored races at Florida's famous beachside track and put its name on the dial, the legend of the Rolex Daytona was born, though not too much fanfare that would come later. Paul Newman's wife bought him one with a creamy Bauhaus-inspired exotic dial, now called the Newman dial, and the famed actor casually gave it to his son-in-law sometime in the 1980s, who auctioned it off for more than $17 million in 2017. That made this once humble and unpopular Daytona variant one of the most expensive wristwatches ever sold. The auction transformed what was already becoming an increasingly coveted watch into a crazed run on old Daytonas, old and new. Now you can hardly get one at retail, especially in all stainless steel, and the used market for Daytonas of any era in any style or metal with any dial has gone completely berserk. Like so many steel professional models, the Daytona remains in demand and sells far above retail on the secondary market, a remarkable result for what was initially an unremarkable watch. Since 2023, the Daytona has carried a new movement, 4131, which succeeded the 4130 that debuted in 2000 when Rolex first brought its movements in-house. To see it in all its glory, look no further than the platinum version of the watch reference 126506, which is a unique for Rolex exhibition caseback. Also launched in 2023 was the Daytona Le Mans Ref 1265-90N. Created for the 100th anniversary of the 24 Hours of Le Mans, the watch was executed in white gold with a red 100 on the bezel. An exhibition case back and a custom movement that tracked 24 hours of the chronograph instead of 12. Most remarkable of all, its reverse panda dial featured the unexpected return of the Paul Newman style with its unique subdials. Rolex Seadweller. As scuba matured beyond surface-level military and recreational uses, commercial, research, and exploratory techniques were developed to go deeper for longer. The Seadweller was Rolex's answer to the demands for watches capable of withstanding the pressure of these deeper dives. In 1967, upon its initial release, the Seadweller was rated to a depth of 4,000 feet and was the first watch to incorporate a helium escape valve. A nifty feature for saturation dives that allows helium to escape the watch without damaging it. The Seadweller is essentially a beefed-up submariner, but that beefing up shouldn't be taken lightly. Rolex had to entirely re-engineer the case. The crystal, the case back, and more to get this kind of water resistance, so while the Seadweller resembles the Submariner on the outside, the guts are a different animal. Waterproofness in nano-scale wristwatches has turned out to provide useful tech that can be ported over two small submarines, cameras, and other scientific tools that are plumbing the depths of our largely unexplored oceans. Rolex often backs those scientific expeditions, linking the watch and the brand to the essence of professional scuba diving. Rolex Deep Sea? Introduced in 2007, the Deep Sea is Rolex's most extreme dive watch with a mind-boggling depth rating of 3,900 meters. For most of its life, it was categorized as part of the Seadweller family until 2024, when it was spun off as its own independent line. Marking that transition in 2024 is the yellow-gold reference 136668LB, an absolutely absurd watch that clocks in at over half a pound and is likely the heaviest watch Rolex makes. It's the only Rolex to feature a mix of gold, ceramic for the bezel, and titanium utilized for the caseback and helium escape valve because gold would fail at the pressures the watch is rated to withstand. The Deep Sea line is small, consisting only of two steel versions and the aforementioned gold. There's also the Deep Sea Challenge, which still maintains Seadweller branding but is classified as a Deep Sea. More experiment than everyday watch, it's based on the prototype that accompanied James Cameron to the bottom of the Mariana Trench and is water-resistant to 11,000 meters. The depth of the trench and a record among commercially available watches. The watch measures a whopping 50 millimeters across and 23 millimeters thick, but its RLX titanium construction, it was Rolex's first ever titanium watch, helps keep its weight down. Rolex Explorer. Contrary to popular belief, Sir Edmund Hillary was in fact not wearing a Rolex Explorer when he conquered Everest in 1953. It was allegedly a watch from British brand Smiths that he wore at the summit, while an experimental Oyster Perpetual provided by Rolex is said to have been stashed away in his gear. Nevertheless, the feat ushered in a new Oyster Perpetual model called the Explorer with a larger case size 36 millimeters as opposed to 30 for millimeters or smaller, which Rolex sold to a new wave of mid-century mountaineering enthusiasts. The Explorer went on to become an entry-level Rolex sports model due only to price, and it remains in that position to this day. Like all Rolex models, the Explorer has gone through many permutations, including more modern iterations like the 14270 1989 to 2001. Now popular among vintage collectors because its tritium luminescence has finally turned beige. As of 2023, the watch is the biggest it's ever been, measuring 40 millimeters in diameter and bringing it even closer to next watch on our list, the Explorer 2. If you prefer to keep things historically accurate, however, a 36 millimeters version of the Explorer reintroduced in 2021 is also available. Rolex Explorer 2. A spelunking watch. That's right. The boldly luminescent 24 or GMT hand was included to help those living in caves keep track of day and night. While spelunking isn't exactly a popular sport, the Explorer became a rather popular watch among those who love a cool design and GMT functionality. Offered today with either a black or white puller dial, the Explorer came out in 1971 in order to perpetuate the privileged relationship Rolex shares with exploration, according to current marketing materials. However, the spelunking history is largely forgotten as the watch increasingly serves as a tool for adventurers of all kinds. The more recent editions, unlike the original, feature fully functional true GMT movements, so the watches can be used for tracking second time zones. Though the Explorer 2 went from a tasty 40 millimeters case up to a 40 millimeters super case in 2011. The reference to 116,570 was intended to celebrate the original design of 1971, which amounts to an orange GMT hand in the correct arrow shape. Those extra millimeters don't feel significant on the wrist, however, and only seem noticeable when compared directly with a 40 millimeters model. Rolex Air King. Like the Explorer, the Air King had existed as the Oyster Perpetual for a long while before Rolex printed Air King on the dial and began marketing it to a new set of post-World War II jet-setters, men who adored and imitated the former war pilots now flying jumbo jets across the Atlantic. Released in 1945, Rolex's new model caught that wave of enthusiasm for the future. And nothing at that moment said future like beautiful commercial jets that turned a weekend jaunt across the ocean to Paris, Rome, or London into a reality. Today's model is 40 millimeters across and carries one of the most divisive dials in Rolex's catalog. Admittedly, the intermittent hour and minute markers on the modern Air King, which are inspired by dashboard instruments, are visually unique for some, jarring as are the touches of green and yellow. It's the only Rolex watch to feature the colored logo style on its dial. For 2022, the Air King got a thorough refresh with the latest movement, design tweaks, and most notably, a new Oyster case featuring crown guards, giving the new Air King a unique feature set among the brand's collections. For today's Rolex enthusiasts, the Air King is positioned at the periphery of the professional series watches. However, you can theoretically get an Air King at retail relatively easily, and that's almost impossible to say of any other all-steel model on the professional side of the catalog. A bird in hand beats two in the bush. Rolex Yacht Master. By the 1980s, the Rolex Submariner had come out in gold, and preppy folks around the world were rocking them as status symbols. Rolex kind of punched the preppy class on the nose with the all-gold Yacht Master of 1992. Interestingly, the Yacht Master's evolution has been one of increased sportiness and reduced bling since its release, not the common direction for Rolex's evolution. The toning down of glamour and upping of ruggedness has made the Yacht Master a bit of a sleeper model in the Rolex catalog, but it is every bit as capable as the Submariner, which it resembles. In 1999, Rolex offered the Yacht Master in platinum and steel Rolexium reference 16622, and from there it's been an endless riffing on precious metal combinations. Though we've yet to see an all-stainless steel variant and likely never will, rumors of a titanium Yacht Master finally came to fruition in 2023 with the release of reference to 126,627. Today's Yacht Master is available in 37mm, 40mm, and 40mm sizes, making it the most diverse of the brand's professional lineup, and the watch carries all the latest Rolex technology inside and out. Distinguishing features include the relief bezel in ceramic or precious metal, depending on the model, and the optional Oyster Flex rubber strap, which is surprisingly luxurious and durable on the wrist. Rolex Oyster Perpetual. In many ways, this is the watch that launched Rolex as the king of industrial watchmaking. The op was, upon its release in 1950, both highly water-resistant and automatically wound, a first-time combo. Perpetual refers not to it being always wound, but to its rotor swinging 360 degrees around a central axis, so perpetually winding despite it only winding in one direction. But none of that matters much to end users, who adore these waterproof watches for their durability and mid-century, function-forward appearance. The Oyster Perpetual has perpetually, no pun intended, been in production since then, and this model formed the basis for most other Rolex models, including the famous Submariner, the Explorer, the Air King, the Datejust, and the Day Date. Today's Oyster Perpetual comes in many sizes and colors and was generally one of the few Rolex models readily available at retail. With no date, no cyclops, no complications, no fluted gold bezel, and a sleek polished and brushed case and matching bracelet, the OP is a pure expression of the Rolex brand. One that's instantly recognizable despite it lacking some key iconic visual cues. Rolex Datejust. Rolex took their Oyster models, first released in the 1920s, and in 1945 added the first date complication that changed just before midnight, rather than taking hours to turn over. Sounds like a simple thing, but in the 1940s, and even now, that feature was unique and convenient. The Cyclops date magnifier was also a first on the Datejust of 1945. The most iconic modern Rolex Datejust retains the fluted bezel of the early Oyster models, though it serves no function now. Combined with the Cyclops, these visual cues say Rolex more loudly than any other features on any other model, including the Submariner and the Daytona. Neither too sporty nor too dressy, the Datejust is the perfect solution for the person seeking one watch to do it all. Robust, ready for water and shocks and all kinds of abuse, but dressy enough to go to a wedding or funeral, the Datejust is a mid-century classic that remains the centerpiece of Rolex's catalog. Essential, iconic, and perpetually in vogue, a Datejust might be the only watch you'll ever require. Rolex Day Date. In 1956, Rolex released a new model with both the date at 3 o'clock and the day of the week boldly displayed in an arced aperture at the top of the dial. It also came on a newly designed 3-link bracelet that glimmered in the lowest of lighting. Few would have expected this more complicated version of the Datejust to have become the chosen watch of multiple U.S. presidents, LBJ, JFK, and Reagan among them, but that's what happened. It certainly didn't hurt that the watch has only ever been available in all precious metal cases, a signifier of wealth and power if ever there was one. Its day display is also available in no fewer than 26 different languages, making it a favorite watch the world over. Now nicknamed the President, though technically this is the official name of the watch's unique bracelet, not the watch itself. The Day Date is the other most recognizable Rolex after the Datejust, and no dressy 1908 or any other model seems capable of outshining it, literally and figuratively. As such, the Day Date is always on offer in a wide array of sizes and dial colors, with enough precious metals and diamonds to cross that thin line into gaudiness. There's even a version with a colorful puzzle dial and emojis on the date wheel. Though a stock, an adorned Day Date remains one of the classiest watches on the market, a sign of sophistication and good taste. Rolex Sky Dweller. The year 2012 saw Rolex release the Sky Dweller to a very mixed response. Some hate how it looks quite vehemently, which makes it a bit of a rebel choice, while others applauded the mechanical accomplishment. What distinguishes the Sky Dweller is, indeed, the brilliant movement inside. This is a full-on annual calendar displaying months, but not years, and it uses a truly clever mechanism and display. The months are indicated by a tiny aperture that turns red at each of the 12 markers around the dial, while the date is in the traditional position at 3 o'clock. A 24-hour GMT indicator is located on the ring above 6 o'clock, which is the most divisive visual feature of the Sky Dweller. But what truly distinguishes this movement is that the ring command bezel works as a selector for whatever function you're looking to set via the crown. One rotates the bezel to any of 7 positions and uses the crown to adjust the affiliated function. It sounds tricky, but after one try, it's entirely intuitive. The Sky Dweller is 40 mm across, which is on the larger side for a Rolex, and it's available on either an Oyster, an Oyster Flex, or a full gold Jubilee bracelet, making it the only model in Rolex's catalog that's available on all 3 bracelet styles. Rolex 1908. The youngest watch in Rolex's lineup is a callback to the year Rolex founder, Hans Wilsdorf, trademarked the brand name and is a clear tribute to the first Oyster Perpetual watches. The 1908 measures 39 mm across and comes equipped with a brand new caliber 7140 movement you can observe through a sapphire caseback, a rarity for the brand. It's easily the brand's dressiest watch and stands apart from other Rolex collections not only for its exhibition caseback, but also its second subdial, its leather strap, and for being the only watch that doesn't use the brand's signature Oyster case. First launched in 2023 in yellow and white gold with a clean black or white dial, the 1908 didn't make much of a splash initially. But in 2024, Rolex launched a platinum version with an ice blue galoche dial. As the only galoche dial in the brand's lineup, another feature to further set the 1908 apart, the platinum version has quickly become a fan favorite. It should be mentioned, the 1908's release in 2023 was not without loss. The 1908 effectively replaced and formally marked the end of the long-standing Cellini collection, which Rolex largely and unceremoniously started discontinuing in 2022.